Are you done? Are you truly done and ready to find your way out? Are you done with the lies, the manipulation, the gaslighting, the deception, and the future faking? If you're ready, truly ready, stay tuned. It's time for you to find your exit. Lifers and loved ones, welcome back to the channel, and thank you so much for watching. As always, plans being laid, no games being played, money being made, and bills being paid. As always, I'm truly grateful. Thank you so much. We'll jump right into the topic without delay. We're going to talk about what it's going to take for you to make your exit. I'm going to share my personal experience with you. We'll kind of keep this one simple and straight to the point. I'm going to tell a bit of my story, and then I'll share some points with you and recommendations that will help on your journey if you're ready to make your way out of a toxic and narcissistic relationship. As always, I'd like to preface my comments by saying I am not a clinical professional. I'm not a psychoanalyst. I'm not a psychologist. I'm not a psychiatrist. I'm none of that. I'm just a woman who is sharing of herself based on my own personal experiences, and I'm not telling you what I think. I'm telling you what I know based on my personal experiences. This content is not designed to harm or trigger anyone. This is a judgment-free zone where we can share information. It gives us an opportunity to feel seen and heard about the things that we've experienced, and we've all had our own unique experience. So thank you so much for allowing me a space to be myself and to be able to share information with you, and I appreciate you for that. To start the video off, we'll talk about my own personal experience a bit. And then I'll kind of reflect on that to circle back to the way that I was able to make my way out of the situation successfully. I want to start by letting you all know that in my situation, there were no children made within the relationship, and there were very few ties. So it was easy for me to make my way out from that aspect of it. But make no mistake, it was definitely challenging. And it took a lot of sacrifice and soul searching to be able to do that successfully. I also had a network and a support system that was a big help to me, and I wouldn't have been able to make it out the way that I did without them. So I thank them for that. And I'm truly humbled and grateful. I'm not making this video lightly. I'm not minimizing the importance and the gravity of the situation that you're in. As far as I'm concerned, anytime that you're in a toxic or narcissistic situation, that you are in danger, especially if you happen to be cohabitating or you're sharing a close space with a toxic or narcissistic person. Just because of their nature, they're extremely reckless and irresponsible. Not only are they not really much concerned with their own safety or well-being, they're certainly not prioritizing yours. And because there's so many other entities and so many other people and energies involved, you never know what can happen on a day-to-day. You never know what is lurking, behind the scenes for you, because you happen to be sharing a space with someone who is irresponsible. All right. So you want to make your way out. Gray rock and then no contact. No contact is always the ultimate goal. So once I came to a point that I knew that I was in a toxic or narcissistic situation, like I knew 100%, I'd been educating myself. I knew what I was dealing with. I was ready to find my exit. I had already been implementing certain steps. I was already in gray rock once I kind of came to the point where I'm like, okay, we are cohabitating and this is no longer healthy for me. I'm seeing certain characteristics. I'm seeing traits. I'm seeing behaviors about you, and it's only getting progressively worse. It was time for me to make my way. And I knew that. I was working a lot at the time, probably 10, 12-hour days. In a lot of ways, that was good. For one, it was because I was making extra money. I was saving up. And for two, I could be out of the house more and I was safe, and I was doing something productive. I was doing something constructive. I was kind of able to get my mind off of the situation that I was in. So work was good for me. And also where I worked was a secure building. It wasn't the type of situation where just anyone could come in. You had to be badged a certain way. You had to be able to fingerprint. Like, you couldn't just come into where I worked. So I always felt safe when I was there. So that was another good thing about the situation that I was in at the time. All right. It allowed me to be out of the house. And it allowed me to kind of strategize and game plan and get myself together and take progressive steps to be able to find my way out of the house. I've been no contact for over 2 years now, well over 2 years now, and hadn't looked back. When I came to the point where I knew that it was time for me to make my exit, we had only been living in the house together. I would say it was less than 6 months. I had been dealing with this person for a while, but it had been less than 6 months. But they say you don't really know someone until you live with them, right? Till you travel with them, you live with them, you see how they are when they're angry, you see how they treat other people. Like, once we actually started living together, that's when things became clear. And for me at that point, it wasn't so much about the relationship itself, because honestly, us cohabitating was really just a business decision. This is right around the time when the pandemic hit. So a lot of people were looking for resources and looking to combine resources to minimize their overhead and things of that nature. So for me, it was really a business decision. I had a place where I was living in on my own and the conditions were no longer livable. And because it was during the pandemic, needs weren't being addressed as far as repairs that were needing to be done. And I was, still paying my rent every month. I was working. I was extremely fortunate during that time. I never stopped working, during the pandemic. So I was able to continue paying my bills. But when things were breaking down within my place, I wasn't able to get someone to come out, or it wasn't safe for me to have someone to come out. So it just came to a place where once the lease was up, it seemed like a good idea. This is someone that I had already been seeing and interacting with. And again, it wasn't so much about the relationship itself. It was a business decision for sure. I'm the type of person, as long as we have an open and honest discussion and there's boundaries in place, you live up to your end of the bargain, I'll live up to my end of the bargain. We'll take care of the overhead. And this was really meant to be a temporary situation. And this wasn't about feelings. Like, I want to make that clear. This wasn't about feelings. Like, I'm not the type of person to just live with someone. Again, I was in my own place. But once the pandemic hit, we had an opportunity, found this great home. So we wanted to go ahead and take advantage of that. Not to mention, it would come at a great savings to both of us. We were comfortable with one another. We were already spending a good amount of time at each other's houses. So it was like, why not? But I honestly feel like once we actually began to cohabitate, the toxic and narcissistic traits began to show more and more, and it really kicked into overdrive. I don't know if they just felt like they had me where they wanted me at. I wouldn't be able to get out. I'd only be speculating. I can't say for sure, but just like anything else, the mask always slips. Like, the facade has to fall after a while. And perhaps the toxic or narcissistic person felt like, they would be okay to do that. Like, maybe their energy was low. Perhaps because I was the main supply at that time, grade A or otherwise, whatever you want to call it, they felt comfortable to just let the mask slip. Like, they had me. They had already installed me like an appliance, and I was there. So they were comfortable more and more to be who they were, even outside of the boundaries that we discussed. Again, I don't make this video lightly, because I understand that there's going to be some people who have children within their relationship with the toxic or narcissistic person that they were with. Some people are married. Some people own the homes that they were in. Some people own businesses together and are under contracts and things of that nature. So I get it. These are all just recommendations. And while I'm making these recommendations, definitely feel free to apply what you find useful to you and continue to move forward. But first and foremost, when you come to a place where you know that you're ready to leave the toxic or narcissistic relationship that you're in, and you no longer want to share space with this person, you're looking to move into no contact and stay there, safety is of the utmost importance. Take it seriously and don't jump to a conclusion. If there ever comes a time where you need to get the authorities involved, don't hesitate to do that. A lot of people make the mistake in domestic situations or abuse situations, toxic or narcissistic situations, by not documenting what they're going through. Nobody else knows. So when it goes from 0 to 100, there's no buildup. There's no documentation. There's nothing to show the struggles that you were having. So definitely feel free to reach out to the authorities for insight, for protection, if that's what it is that you need, especially if there's children involved. I want to stress that. All right. So we're in this space where I'm cohabitating with the toxic and narcissistic person. At this point, we're living very separate within the house. Like, I have my own room on this side of the house and they have their own room on this side of the house. Okay. But there's boundaries set in place. I'm very big on safety within my home. I'm not much for having strange people coming over to my home that I don't know. I don't like people knowing exactly where it is that I lay my head, where my personal belongings are. Like, that's just one of the ways I safeguard myself in life, is just limiting who I have in my home. Not to mention, prior to cohabitating with this toxic or narcissistic person, I had been living on my own for years. So I'm used to running my household a certain way. I'm used to being, the one calling the shots as far as who comes over, who knows exactly where I live, how people can come and go, who has access to my home. So I understood that I sacrificed a bit of that once I was deciding to cut my overhead and cohabitate with another adult, because you can't control people. There's going to have to be compromises. But this was the reason why I felt it important to sit down and have an open, honest conversation about my expectation and how I like to run household, what my boundaries were, what I was good with and what I was not good with, so that it would be clear. And I thought I would communicate that in advance. So we come to a point where we're living separately. I'm working quite a bit. I'm in Grey Rock. All right. I'm in Grey Rock now. I've been doing a lot of reflecting. I've been spending a lot of time on my own outside of work, just making sure that my thoughts were clear. And I began to put my exit strategy together. Safety. I can't stress that enough. When you're dealing with someone who is fragile in their egos and they suffer from narcissistic rage due to narcissistic injury, you never know what they're going to be capable of. Be aware of yourself. Do whatever it is that you need to do to keep yourself safe. All right. As you're in this process, I had the benefit of cohabitating with someone who had to travel a bit here and there for work. So I took advantage of that time. OK, my exit, I would say in all, took about a month or so, maybe 4 or 5 weeks, somewhere here or there from start to finish. And I was extremely covert in my movement. That's another point that I want to make. You're going to want to be covert in your movement. I'm the type of person by nature, if you're not in my trust tree, like if I don't feel close to you, like if I don't trust you and you don't trust me, you're not going to know what I'm doing or when I'm doing it. That's just how I am. I don't like people in my business. I don't discuss my personal business much. And I'm not one to be explaining myself either. You know, I'm out in the world. I take care of myself. I make my own money. I'm sufficient in that way, have my own credit, have my own vehicles. I'm not going to be asking permission or explaining myself much in situations like that. And my self-preservation kicked in, which I'm going to discuss in this video as well, because I think if you have the spiritual gift of empathy or you happen to be a giver, I'm a giver in my essence first. It's important for you to know when to go into self-preservation mode. You have to make sure that your boundaries are activated. If there's no balance there, you need to go into, self-preservation mode as you're navigating your way through that situation for your safety and for your overall peace and joy and well-being. Okay. And there's nothing wrong with that. There are seasons in life where selfishness is necessary, and this is one of them, 100%. So I took advantage of the time when they'd be traveling. I gradually started moving my things out of the home. There had been in passing discussion about what it would look like if I left the house. But in hindsight, the toxic or narcissistic person wasn't taking me seriously. They weren't taking me seriously at all. I feel like, again, due to their inflated sense of self, their entitlement to me, like they never thought I would leave. Like they never thought I would just leave the house the way that I did. I began making contact with the property management company to find out what it would take for me to be removed from the lease so that my credit wouldn't be impacted, so that my rental history wouldn't be impacted, as there was going to be a change in household composition. I was leaving the home. So that was something that I was working on as well. I want to say that this was a situation where I definitely had to step out on faith. It was one of those situations where I was willing to make the sacrifice, and I understood that my peace and my safety and my overall well-being was of the utmost importance. Physical things, tangible things, the home, I could recreate that. I didn't want my credit to be negatively affected. I didn't want my rental history to be negatively affected by this situation. That was important to me. It's been my life's work, literally, to build my credit up to where it is and what it is. And I wasn't going to allow that to be tarnished in any way by this situation. It just wasn't something that I was willing to accept. But the belongings and the things, the items, I wasn't so much worried about. However, I did want to be able to remove and preserve as much of that as I possibly could. Sacrifice is something that you're going to have to come to terms with once you come to a place where you're ready to leave a toxic person or a narcissist, especially if you were sharing space, because it's going to take, like I said, some finesse. You're going to have to be a strategist about the way you do this. I was fortunate in the sense that the toxic person that I was dealing with, they traveled. So I would have time to remove my items here and there. I would have a lot of early mornings and a lot of late nights. I'd wake up before I went into work. I would do some packing. I would do some organizing. I was disassembling, taking down shelves, like doing what I needed to do. And then I would go to work. And then once I came home, even if I was dead dog tired, I would do a few loads. I would load up my vehicle and I would move my belongings. So hopefully, where it is that you're going to be relocating to and you have a soft spot to land. If you have a soft spot to land, you can begin coordinating so that you can slowly but surely start moving your items out of the house. I would recommend starting with the smallest and most portable items first, and then some of the bigger things, but you'll, decide by priority, what you would like to move first. I want you to know that this isn't going to be easy, and no toxic or narcissistic person is created equal. We all have our unique experience with this. While there are some things that all of us experience in a toxic or narcissistic relationship, the reactions and what takes them to their breaking point and what they view as rejection and what would cause narcissistic injury is going to be a little bit different for all of us. Okay. Obviously, once the person starts to notice that your things are moving out of the home, once they see your distance, once they feel your disposition change, once they have less and less access to you, they're losing control over you, it's going to make them feel away. And many times, the more you love yourself, the more you create that rubber band and you give that distance, the more that they're going to push, because now they want to reinsert their dominance. They want to feel that control over you again, and it's not going to be healthy, and it's going to be extremely petty. This is where your discipline and your restraint is going to come in, because they can look to trigger you in a lot of different ways. They can stop holding up their end of the bargain within the home, stop, paying their bills like they're supposed to. They could begin bringing other energies into the home that you're not comfortable with. They can just start letting the home fall by the wayside as far as hygiene and like cleanliness. They might deliberately start breaking things. It's hard to say. OK, so I just want you to be prepared for that. But again, your safety and your getting out is of the utmost importance. And me stepping out on faith, I had an understanding of what I was dealing with as much as I possibly could at the time. But I kind of went into tunnel vision mode and self-preservation mode. I just knew I wanted out. So when they would travel, and they would travel for a few days at a time, so it was perfect, I would use my days to pack up and organize. The first time that I did it, it was a huge haul. It's like I had one final get together in the house. They weren't there. It was a great time. Had people over, had a great time, and began right after that to clean and remove my stuff from the home. When they came back, they saw that a lot of my clothing, a lot of my furniture, a lot of my decorative items, pictures on the wall and things of that nature were out of the house. That first haul, I made sure to remove jewelry, mementos, my shoes, clothes, and things that I really, really cared about. OK, so I knew, if nothing else, as long as I had that out of the house, whatever other sacrifices I would have to make as far as my personal belongings, I could deal with. But it definitely set off alarms for the narcissist when they came home and found that my belongings were gone. My shoes and clothing and stuff like that. Like, if you come home and see that my shoes and clothes are gone, it's real now. It's serious. They were ready to talk and have conversation. Now, conversation is over. If you have a soft spot to land, coordinate to find ways to move your belongings out, because they will steal from you. They will pilfer. They will take your belongings. In hindsight, looking back on it now, it was little things, nothing that I really care about. I've moved on, but I'm sure there's things, articles of my clothing, pieces of jewelry, sunglasses, things that I liked that the toxic or narcissistic person was able to take from me in the process of my moving and making my way out. But that's okay. Before I did make that major haul, I did begin to sequester my things. I did begin to just leave things in the trunk of my car, and I have 2 vehicles. So I was able to leave things in my vehicles, and I had the keys. They didn't have access to my car. So I was able to put smaller things in my car for safekeeping, things that really meant a lot to me. I would begin to lock them away, whether it was in a safe or again by keeping them in my vehicles or keeping them with me at all times. That's how I got around that until I was ready to do that first haul. If you don't have access in a soft spot to land as far as where you're going to live, get yourself a temporary storage unit so that you can begin moving your items. That way you'll still have access to them. You'll know exactly where they are. They're locked away, and ensure that no one knows exactly where your storage unit is until you need someone else to know. Make sure that you're the only one with the key to it. The one that I got, you would have to put a code in and stuff like that. And no one knew where my storage unit was until it was time for someone to know where it was. And that's how I handled that. And slowly but surely, in a very sly, sleek and cunning way, I would be doing hauls where it would be smaller boxes. you know, DVDs, memorabilia, maybe small pieces of furniture, bedding, decorative items, like smaller things. I would gradually just start getting that stuff out of the house, which leaves the bigger things, the furniture. At a point throughout this process, as I was continuing to work and organize, there was hoovering going on for sure. I'll give you an example. So I would be in the kitchen packing up. I'd be in the kitchen packing up. At this point, like, major things in my house are gone. You know, I'm spending less and less time in the house. They can't tell when I'm actually going to be sleeping there and when I'm not. Again, we have separate bedrooms on opposite sides of the homes. Sometimes I was there, sometimes that I wasn't. And I'm a nocturnal creature. So even if I work, I'll stay up late to get things done. And I'll just enjoy that peace and quiet as I'm being productive. So I'd be down there, you know, quietly, like packing up, staging my things in the garage, like getting them ready. Or I'd be, you know, as quietly as I could, like loading things into my car, just to get ready to make that next haul. And they would just come down and just sit. They would just come down and just sit at the kitchen table and watch me. Never say a word. But that was like a mini, like, Hoover right there in the moment, hoping so much that I would engage with them, hoping so much that I would make eye contact. And I guarantee you, with my headphones on, even sometimes with my glasses on, like, I would just be laughing at the podcast that I was listening to, laughing at whatever movie it was that I was listening to. Sometimes I'd be talking on the phone and I wouldn't engage them. Very Grey Rock. I was methodical in that. And again, it was by the grace of God. I definitely was not able to do this on my own. But not paying them any attention, I would continue doing what I was doing. I wasn't of fear of any danger or anything like that at that time. And I was just glad in that moment that I was taking the necessary steps to make my way out of the situation. And I want to say now there's a new supply involved that I could see. Like, I knew who, I'm not going to say I knew who the person was, but I knew they existed. Right. But because of the education that I was getting and because of where I was, this wasn't about my feelings. I was in self-preservation mode, which I'm going to dig a little more into in a bit. But I was in self-preservation mode. Again, I only moved into the home as a way of cutting my overhead. It was a business decision. This wasn't about the feelings. You know what I mean? So once everything became clear, I knew exactly what it was I was dealing with. I had been through the phases. I had been through the love bomb evaluation and the discard a few times. I was pretty much numb to it. Once I got clarity, like once I was in the house with them and I got clarity and I knew exactly what it was that I was dealing with, self-preservation mode started to kick in. I was glad that they had a new supply. I wanted my boundaries and my home to be respected because I was still there and I was still paying bills, but I really didn't care, to be honest. I wasn't seeing the person, but I knew that they existed. The toxic or narcissistic person would do little things to make sure that I knew that they were entertaining someone else, but I didn't realize it as much at the time as I do now. I just know they were trying to trigger me. You know, they were trying to upset me by having phone conversations in front of me or deliberately, you know, when the phone would ring, getting up and walking up. But again, it was a welcome distraction for me. I didn't care. I didn't care. So that was okay with me. And that's why I preach in these videos. It's not so much that you enjoy it or you like the fact that you know the person that you once may have had feelings for or once shared space with has a new supply, but you have to understand that it's a blessing in disguise. It makes it harder for you to get away if they don't have someone else to focus on. It's a benefit to you, but it's all about your feelings and your willingness to accept what's going on. Again, I was in self-preservation mode. So have your new supply. It makes it easier for me to, you know, get out of the situation. So that's how I chose to look at it. I didn't love it. I didn't enjoy it, but I embraced it and I reverse engineered that new supply and that discard, and I used it to my advantage. And I want to say this discard was pretty much self-inflicted in this particular case. I had definitely been devalued and discarded before, unbeknownst to me, but in this particular instance, it was like self-inflicted. It was a self-imposed discard, and I was okay with it. And I feel like when you take the power back and like when you take that discard into your own hands, it makes the toxic or narcissistic person look at you different. I know it does. It raised their stock in a sense. A part of the fun that they're having is knowing that they're hurting you while they're doing what they're doing. A part of what makes the new supply enjoyable is the fact that they're hurting someone else in the process. of that happening. So when I was giving my distance, when I was non-reactive, when I was gray rock, when they were texting me little random things to Hoover me, asking me about a bill or asking me about an expense or asking me if I could take care of this or, hey, are you going to be around later? And I wasn't responding. I know that that was narcissistic injury. And I tried to tread lightly about that, but I wanted to definitely make a statement. I wanted to, make the point clear that you no longer have control of me and you no longer have access to me. And because I had already been removing my belongings from the home, I wasn't worried about their narcissistic injury or their rage or anything. I understood that once you start telling a toxic or narcissistic person no, there's going to be consequences for that. And I'm going to cover that in the very foreseeable future in another video. Please comment down below if you understand exactly what I'm talking about, what the consequences are, and what you could possibly experience once you tell a toxic or narcissistic person no. If you want to see that video, let me know down in the comment section, but I'm definitely working on it. And I plan to release that video in the very foreseeable future because that's a subject that I feel like I want to discuss and I can do from a point of intellect and from my experience. Like when you really put your foot down, again, it's all about manipulation and control over you and their entitlement to your energy. So it's like, how dare you? How can you tell me no? Like they just don't grasp that concept. They don't understand it. I'm getting my belongings out. I'm gray rocking. I'm making a deliberate effort to pick up overtime and to be out of the house. I'm still being active now. I'm not like seeing anyone romantically or anything like that, but I'm definitely socializing. This is around the time when the holidays are approaching. So it's like the end of October, which is Halloween, and going into Thanksgiving. And the reason I remember that is because there were functions that I was going to around that time. I was definitely not inviting the toxic or narcissistic person to any of those functions. I was going to those functions on my own and surrounding myself with my network of friends and people who, I can feel comfortable with, who understood what my situation was. And that was what that was. So I was able to still enjoy myself. I was able to be out of the house. I had nights where I wouldn't come home. Like I said, I'm socializing, I'm hanging out. I got family. I have a support system. So it's like, if I needed, to be away or be out of the house and be in safety, it was very easy for me to be able to do that. And I know that I'm fortunate that I had that, and not everybody has that. Some people have relocated to cities and states where they don't have any family or friends. All right. And that's why I bring up that I understand that our situations are going to be uniquely different. And all of these are just suggestions that I'm making and things that you may be able to use, tips that may help you as you find yourself in a place where you're ready to leave the toxic or narcissistic relationship that you're in. I'm gray rock, socializing, but now they're starting to push. As they see that you're creating that distance, you're not invested in them anymore. Like the things that they're doing, you're not reacting to them. You're not showing that they're bothering you. Any text messages or anything that I would get, once I had already established that this was going to be unhealthy and I knew it was done, like I wasn't much entertaining that. But again, I was trying to tread that lightly as to keep like the harmony in the home as much as possible. If you're cohabitating with a toxic or narcissistic person, like there is no peace, there is no harmony. But I didn't want to do things to deliberately push or trigger this toxic person because I had like sample sizes, like I saw bits of narcissistic rage, like I knew what they could possibly be capable of, but I didn't want to feel that wrath. I didn't want to come home, and find the house trashed or something like that. But it did give me some comfort that they were mutually invested in the home from a contractual standpoint. So I rested on that. I was in a self-preservation autopilot type mode as I was making my way out. It was just certain things that I didn't have time to care about as far as what they would do and how they would react. It wasn't about them. It was about me. And I recognize that. So I make my way out. I get majority of my belongings out of the home. I had come to a place now where I wasn't there as much. They couldn't pinpoint my movements. That was another thing that was big for me. I was coming and going at my leisure. They were not able to pinpoint my movements because we really had nothing in common at this point outside of this home. I was moving around. And that helped me a lot too, because they couldn't plan around me. They never knew when I was going to be there, when I wasn't. I had secured as much as I could the room that I would stay in. I didn't have any like valuable belongings in there that I was afraid to part with. So it was okay. And that was where I was. And finally, once the opportunity came for me to come and get the last of my belongings, I did not announce that. I literally just showed up that day, and they were big items. So I wasn't able to do it by myself, but that was a good thing. And I had help with that. And that actually helped me, because they're always worried about perception, and they're wearing that mask. And because of the facade, they weren't going to show what they were really capable of in front of other people. So it was a great idea that I had help come with me when I came back to get the last of my belongings. And again, I didn't announce it. I showed up, disassembled my bedroom furniture, you know, packed up like my bigger items, loaded them up. I had reserved a U-Haul by then. I went and picked up my U-Haul and showed up at the house with it and helped to move my belongings. And that was jarring. First of all, they weren't in control of the situation. Okay, that's throwing them off. And I can see the anxiety. At this point, I know this person, like I know how their mind works. And as time is going on, like I'm learning, you know, what sets them off. And while I wanted to remain classy at all costs, because I also knew that vengeance wasn't for me, when you start to play the payback game, you lose. When you engage, you lose. When you choose to participate in their game, you lose. And essentially, they're controlling you. Now, I understand there's levels to everything. Sometimes you get pushed to a point where you have to react, and I get that. But fortunately for me, because of the way I did it, they never had an opportunity to try to push me or trigger me in a way that they could get a response. There were attempts made, but they were unsuccessful. And I'm grateful for that. Like there were some times and there were certain scenarios within that house where I really had to tuck in my feelings, attempts to start arguments, you know, bringing people over into the home that I wasn't comfortable with, that I had no knowledge of, you know, things of that nature. But by that point, again, I didn't care. I didn't care. My belongings were out of the house. I was very rarely there. However, up until the point where my name was removed for the lease, I was still responsible for bills, and I was still responsible for, you know, making sure that the rent was being paid in full. So I was still doing that. So in a sense, you know, my boundaries and my desires and what matter to me still deserve to be respected, but you can't expect that from an unstable, irresponsible, irrational, toxic, or narcissistic person. Like they don't care about any of that. But I was just looking to make sure that my credit was still intact. I was still looking to make sure that my rental history was still intact. So that was how I went about it. So I continued to pay bills. At this point, because of the way that the living situation was set up, there wasn't anything in my name that was going to cause a major issue outside of like a few small utilities or something like that. And again, I wasn't going to be there. So that would be that person's responsibility. Once my name was off the lease, they could just go show to these entities that they were on the lease, and they would be able to activate, you know, their own utilities in their own name. So that all worked out very well. Again, very strategic. Things worked out really well. I had a P.O. box at the time, so I had done a change of address. None of my mail was coming to the home. Obviously, this toxic or narcissistic person at this point did not have access to my P.O. box. I had this P.O. box for years, even before I had met them. So I already had that in place. So that wasn't something that they could control, regulate, or had any insight into. Funny story. There was actually a time where, because they did travel, you know, they had a package come in. They were worried about it getting swiped, so I allowed them to use my P.O. box address to have something shipped to it. And you know how toxic and narcissistic people are. They think because they're entitled to you, which is wrong, they're entitled to anything that comes with you. So the toxic or narcissistic person, like they tried to do an informed delivery on my P.O. box, which I don't know if you all are familiar, but with informed delivery through USPS, you can actually see your mail before it comes in or as it's coming in. Like they tried to go online to USPS and activate informed delivery, but because I own the box and I was the admin, I was the one making the payments, I got an email notification about that, and I instantly shut that down. And we never even had a conversation about it. I'm sure that they knew. I'm sure that they received a bit of, you know, narcissistic injury about that. And I'm sure that they got email communication. The request has been denied, you know, for this reason. But I shut that down. And it was like, you never even asked me permission to do that. Like, who are you to think that you can have informed delivery and you can see what's coming into my P.O. box that you don't pay for, that has nothing to do with you? You only even had the address because either A, you'd sent things to me directly, or I allowed you to use the address so that you could receive a shipment. So just situations like that. But I had a P.O. box, so all of my mail was going there. I didn't have any like major, ties into the home outside of the lease. And once I was able to have my name removed from the lease, I knew that I was liberated. I was free. I was free. I was absolved of any financial responsibility as it came to the home. I did have to sacrifice my security deposit, but it was well worth it. God and the universe have brought that back to me tenfold, many, many, many times over since then. Okay. And that's what I knew. That's what I knew. That's what walking in faith did for me. Again, everyone's process will be a little bit different, but what I understood above all else is as long as I could make it out unscathed with my safety, my employment intact, like my vehicles, I didn't care. I knew I would be fine. I was working. Again, money was being made. I had a nest egg. I had a savings. I had credit. I had a soft spot to land. I was able to get my belongings out. Nothing else mattered. And I was going to be able to make a clean break from this person because we didn't have any ties. We weren't married. We don't have any children within this relationship. We don't have any dogs. We don't have any pets. We don't have any businesses. We don't have any vehicles. We don't have any ties. I had my vehicles well before I met them. We were not tied into each other anyway once my name was removed from that lease. There are some small details that for the safety of other people involved, I will omit. But there were some situations that happened, in between there that really tested my resolve, tested my faith. But luckily, no physical harm or anything was brought to me. No harm was brought to my belongings. But I would run into situations where because the toxic or narcissistic person came home and saw that I was packing up, they would take it upon themselves to like take all my pictures off the wall. So that's an example. Like I came home one day and I wasn't at this phase in my packing and, removing things from the home, but any decorations that I had hanging up within the house that were mine that I had before I met them, like they would just take them all off the wall and pile them up. But again, they didn't damage anything and I was completely fine with that. As far as I was concerned, they were just helping me move. But I think for them, because of the narcissistic injury that they were experiencing and them wanting to control the narrative, that was just a step that they took that made them feel like they were in control and that they were engineering the discard. And that's fine. Again, you got to be able to put your pride to the side in the midst of you being in that self-preservation mode. And it doesn't matter about the optics or the narrative or the storyline. They can have it. I'm the type of person when I'm done with a situation, you can tell these people whatever you want. I don't care. I don't care what they think. I don't care what they feel. Like they're not providing. They're not helping me through the situation. They're not putting any food on the table. Anyone who is connected to you truly cares for you and knows you and knows your character. They won't require any explanation. They'll know. They'll know better. Or at least they'll be bright enough to remain neutral until they can get the truth. And that's all I ask. Being in a toxic or narcissistic relationship comes with some upsides. And one of them is it's a way of showing you who's really for you and who's not. That's one thing that it will do. So I'm grateful for that. So let them control the narrative. Let them be able to say, oh, I kicked them out. Oh, I made them leave. It doesn't matter. That's fine. You know what I mean? That's fine. So I came back that last time, got all my belongings because I came with that U-Haul and it seemed like such a major production. I had help with me. They couldn't overreact. What they ended up doing was just leaving, gathering up some belongings, and they left. I don't know. I feel like, they probably left for the night. Again, that was the last time I ever physically laid eyes on the toxic or narcissistic person that I was cohabitating with that day when I came back with that U-Haul and extra hands to get my big furniture and stuff out. I never saw them again, so I don't know. But I'm pretty sure they left with a bag or two. So it's like they were going to be gone. And that was perfect. I was able to go through the home comb with a fine tooth comb, make sure that anything that was mine that I wanted to take with me, I was able to do that. I did not damage, touch, I didn't touch anything that belonged to that other person. I definitely am not a vengeful person. And I was just so grateful that I was able to make it out of the situation, that I didn't want to do them any harm. The harm was already done. I was leaving. My name was going to be off the lease. I wasn't going to be financially responsible. I was free. I was free. I was practically homeless at the time. I don't want to be melodramatic, but before moving into this home with this toxic person, I had lived alone for years. My house, my overhead, my boundaries, like my rules, my way of running things. So I sacrificed that. So I make the joke, that I was borderline homeless, but really I was free. And I was grateful, and I knew that God and the universe would provide. And not to mention, I had 2 vehicles. I was working gainfully. I was making money. Like, I had a nest egg. I had a soft spot to land. Like, I knew that I would be okay. My main focus at that time was getting out safely without confrontation or major issue, and with my rental history and my credit and my name intact. That was what was of the utmost importance to me, because I spent so much of my life building it up, you know. Credit is like trust. It's gained in drops and lost in buckets. You know, one late payment, you're screwed. You mess up your rental history, it prevents you from being able to, you know, secure something else on your own, no matter how much money you make. And I didn't want to risk that. Always, you know, for the most part of my adult life, been self-sufficient and been independent, and had been taking care of myself financially, you know, successfully with no problems. So I was able to go through the house with a fine-tooth comb. I took a lot of photos. All right. So that's another pro tip. Like, if you're in a situation like that, take a lot of photos. I didn't want them to try to say, you know, that I left the home trash, or that I left a lot of garbage all over, or that I damaged things, or, you know, that I didn't clean up behind myself, or I didn't want them to be able to write that narrative. So I made sure that I took a lot of pictures, and any trace of me in that home, I pretty much left it. I mean, I even took certain light bulbs that I liked, and that's because they were mine and I liked them. But I went through, I didn't touch anything that didn't belong to me. I didn't damage anything within the home. And I actually it was bittersweet for me. I was happy. I was liberated, but I loved that home. Like, just the floor plan, the location, the neighborhood. I picked it. So I hated that, you know, I had to walk away from it, but I knew it was for the greater good. And you know, it taught me humility and showed me what, you know, was really important in life, which I already knew, don't get me wrong, but this enlightens you on another level when you have to go through a situation like that. So I made it out, and I never looked back. I never had contact with the toxic or narcissistic person. I mean, and that seems so drastic, but that's exactly how I went that day. When I came to remove my last bits of furniture, because I had other people with me, we never had and we weren't going to have a conversation, because I was gray rock then, borderline no contact. I really wasn't going to have anything to say, but because there were other people around and I was running around and we were disassembling furniture and we were making loads, it was really no conversation to be had. So basically they just removed themselves from the house so they wouldn't have to be there to witness it. And I cleared everything out of the house, cleared everything else out, never went back. I made contact one final time with the property management company, and I dropped off my remotes and my keys and fobs and anything that I had in relation to that house. I returned it directly to the property management company. I got paperwork proving that. I got paperwork proving and showing notification showing that my name had been removed from the lease, and that's all I needed. And I moved on from there. So just to recap that was just my own personal experience. Being covert is going to be important, you know, not discussing your plans. Take time to write things down. I'm a classic woman, and writing things down not only like reinforces, you know, what you felt at the time when you wrote it down, but it just gives you something to refer back to so you can kind of have your steps together. You're going to want to think about, you know, your paperwork, again, mail. If you have a soft spot to land, where is it, you know, that you're going to live? If you have multiple vehicles, where is it that you can park your vehicles? Because these are all things that I had to think about. How is this going to affect my commute where I was staying, my commute to get back and forth to work? Because in the process of all this happening, we still, you know, have to be responsible, productive adults. You know, we have to continue working and taking care of business, and we have to be focused at work. Like, we can't let our professional lives suffer. And even though this is going to be trying and it's going to be difficult on you, you still, you know, have to show up, be reliable, be dependable and responsible at work every day. So you have to think about, you know, wherever it is that you're going to be staying, how does it affect your commute? Are you going to be able to store your belongings where you're going to be staying, or is it going to be easier for you to be able to get a storage unit? Are you of the means to be able to get the storage unit, depending on how long you need it, and be able to pay for that every month? Because now that's going to be an added expense. So these are just things to think about as you're in your process. And again, because I didn't have children that I needed to consider, it was pretty cut and dry. But these are also things that you're going to need to plan for, depending on your city and state. And if you're the custodial parent, you know, I don't know exactly, you know, what needs to happen as far as you're just removing your children from the home. Obviously, the other parent still has rights to their children. And as we know, parallel parenting with a toxic or narcissistic person can be extremely difficult, extremely cumbersome. You may have to look for a mediator and a go-between as you set up arrangements for this person to be able to still see their children. And that's a reality. So these are things that you have to plan for, you know, your home life, your work life, your health, your overall wellness, and your self-care as you're in the process of making your exit. Again, making sure that you're transferring your mail, making sure that you're not staying in any contracts with this person unnecessarily. If you're able to get your name removed from the lease, do so. If you're able to, you know, deactivate utilities so you're no longer responsible for what's happening in the house once you're no longer there. Again, those are things you'll also have to take into consideration. Please let me know down in the comment section if I need to make a part 2 of this video. I'll definitely look to do that. If you have any questions, comments, or concerns, as always, in relation to this particular video or any content on the channel, feel free to send an email to askbizlifestyle@gmail.com. That is askbizlifestyle@gmail.com. I'll definitely give you that energy back. You may want to ask some questions offline that you don't necessarily want to ask in the comment section, but definitely do. I would urge you. It helps the video so much. It pushes the content out through the algorithm, but it also, moreover, it allows us to share information with one another. You may have a question that someone else who is viewing this has, and it would benefit them to get that answer. I'll definitely give you that energy back. If you have any questions, please do drop them down in the comment section. If you feel like it will be a question that might help someone else, definitely drop that down there and I'll be sure to address that in the comment section. Please do tap that like button as well. I definitely do appreciate your liking the video. Subscribe if you haven't already. And much appreciation to those of you who choose to engage with me in the comment section. We're developing a rapport with one another and we're talking regularly in the comment section. So I definitely do appreciate you for that. I appreciate you for the growth of the channel and the way that I've been able, you know, to use the things that I've gone through to help other people. That's extremely important to me. Check the description. I like to pay homage to other creators who helped me as I was in the earlier stages of my healing journey. You'll find information there about the video as well as those content creators. Check the about page on YouTube. The address to my P.O. box is there. Information about the channel, the links to my Cash App and my PayPal are there. Any donation you want to make to the channel, nothing is too small. And I appreciate you for that. If you want to buy a super thanks, you know, go ahead and grab that. If you see the heart shape with the $sign as you're making a comment on the video, definitely, you know, buy a super thanks. And I appreciate you. It helps out the channel so much and it'll definitely go back into the channel. But I'll continue to make this content regardless. Check out the Healing and Understanding playlist as well. But also continue to support the other content on the channel as this is a lifestyle-based channel. And thank you so much as always. I appreciate you for allowing me to share myself, share my experience, how I was able to make it out of the toxic or narcissistic situation, the cohabitation situation unscathed. And these are just some of the steps that I took in order to do that. These are all just recommendations. Make sure that you're being safe as you make your decisions, as you take your steps to be able to find your way into no contact. Make sure that you're being safe. You never know what these toxic or narcissistic people are capable of, but don't let that fear prevent you from planning your exit and seeing it through. And as always, I appreciate you and I believe in you. So you be sure to do the same thing. It's been a pleasure. It's truly been a pleasure. And I thank you. Until we meet again. We're out.